Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boy, the dope ass dude. Happy Monday, and I am so excited to be back with you all on tonight. It's going to be an amazing night. We have a great conversation that I believe is going to touch your life in some way because I think this subject that we're going to be talking about on tonight, we all know someone or we've been that person. So I think we will all walk away a little bit freer than how we came in on tonight. So I'm really excited about that. And we're going to go ahead and get started. You guys already know the preliminary things. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, if you don't mind, go ahead, subscribing to the YouTube channel. And while you're there, go ahead and click on notification so that you can be notified each and every time a new podcast is uploaded to the site. And then while you're there, go ahead and click on that like. So we want this video to get shared with as many people as possible. And it happens when you click on that like. So if you're on the go, just giving a shout out to the on the go listeners on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. So if you're unable to catch the podcast live on Monday, you can always catch it on the go as well. So, and if you're not following me on TikTok and Instagram, if you don't mind going ahead and follow me on both of those platforms, I am the Dope Ass Dude podcast on both Instagram and TikTok. Again, that's the Dope Ass Dude podcast on both platforms. And also, many of you didn't know this here, but you can watch the podcast live on Facebook right now at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, which is now Twitter. You can always watch it there. And you can watch it here on YouTube, and you can participate in the chat on any of those platforms. All you have to do is just watch it and begin to chat. And then while we're at it, you can go ahead and you can follow Jerry out on Instagram and on TikTok. On Instagram, he is the real JAT World. That's on Instagram. And on TikTok, he is JAT World 125. So again, on Instagram, he's the real JAT World on Instagram. And TikTok, he is JAT World 125. So you guys know Jerry. He's been on the podcast before. He was on season 4 of the podcast, and we talked about his book, Principles of the Live Free Lifestyle. That's what we talked about before. And this guy is one of the most extraordinary people that I know. And this is just real deal. I watch him all the time and I listen to his videos, and he drops some of the most amazing nuggets that causes you to think outside of the box. And that's one thing that I'm really grateful for at this phase of my life, is that God has blessed me with people or surrounded me or place me in contact with people that inspire me and that causes me to think outside of the box. And this is what Jerry does each and every day. I just looked at one of his videos the other day. This brother was in London. He just caught a flight and he was out in London. And so, I mean, I'm like, hey, this is the life I want to live. So he's super inspirational. And then also he is a cancer survivor. So that's something else that's pretty extraordinary about him, because he comes with a different viewpoint on life. And I'm going to let him talk a little bit more about that. So we're going to go ahead and bring him on out. Jerry, what's up, man?
What's going on, John? How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling amazing. You weren't expecting all of that, were you?
That's a lot to live up to. Wow. Okay.
You're already doing it, brother. You already do. I'm only talking about what I see each and every day through your posts, brother.
Yeah,
so what's been going on with you?
Yeah. So since we spoke last, quite a bit. Obviously, travel. Doing some speaking engagements. So I was down in Arkansas. And we did something called the Live Free Experience in Delaware. Like you said, I just got back from London. And then in the meantime, I also completed another book. So as part of the Live Free series, you won't be able to see it because of the green screen, but you can kind of see it a little bit. It's called the Live Free Evolution. So it is just coming out. But notice the size of this baby. So this is actually a journal style book. which really digs. It kind of gets its basis from principles of the live free lifestyle. But for people who are looking to kind of walk through this a little bit differently, you get a short message and a quote for the day, and then you can use the rest of the page to journal. So we can come back to that sort of stuff. So I've been busy doing that. Doing my best to wrap up this AI course. It's called Everyday AI that I'm building. So I have about 30 minutes left of recording, and that course will be done and ready for sale. And then I'm just, always looking forward to what is the next thing that I'm going to do, which might be writing the leadership book. Principles of the Live Free Leader, I think, might be next. So.
Okay, and so tell us, where can we get the evolution book? Where can we find that at?
Everything's on Amazon. So if you can find me, Jerry A. Thompson, or just you can look up Principles of the Live Free Lifestyle. If it's not out there right now, I promise it'll be there within the next 24, 48 hours. But this is a really different approach because I'm not really a journal type person myself. But just going through the process of building this book and getting it in front of people, I think it's just going to be a different way for people to sort of embrace their own journey as they evolve, right? And so, pretty cool stuff to do, I think.
Nice. So, and I know the whole live free movement came from, you just get into a place in your life where, because you were a cancer survivor, and it was so many lessons that you learned through
Right.
that whole experience. So, like, have people really been receptive? Have you seen people transforming their lives, through reading your book and so forth? Because I know it did do that for me. When I read it, it causes you to want to live better.
Yeah, and so Principles of the Live Free Lifestyle has been exactly that, and really surprising, humbling when I hear from people personally how that small book is impacting their lives. I mean, from people who were thinking about giving up, people who have just sort of taken on a different perspective, and people kind of lock in the different parts of that book. Whether we're talking about the sage wisdom of Batman, did you really just pee on my carpet? Solve the solvable problems, the tradition of the talking stick. Like, I just hear so many different things, and it's kind of what encouraged me to keep going. And that's how we got to the Live Free Evolution. And we'll just keep the series going because for me, it's one thing to do these things from the standpoint of these are accomplishments. But if you think about it from the standpoint of there's someone out there who needs this, there's someone who's waiting for this. I don't want that person to go without the thing that I was supposed to add or bring to their life. And that's one of the things that really drives me to sort of get things done. And so what are we? We're in March. So since May, I've released 4 books. All right. So it's been
Since
4 books
May.
since May. Yeah.
So, okay, so now I pay attention to your social media. How did I miss that you released 4 books?
So let me count them all for you. So first was the golf book that came out May 4th of last year. Principles of the Live Free Lifestyle and the workbook both came out the same day in August. And now the Live Free Evolution. So that's 4 books in about 10 months.
Okay, you had me nervous there. Like, I'm like, what have I missed out on? So I need to get the evolution book.
Yeah,
So hey, there we go.
and it's so interesting because I've done other things in between that. So it's not that I'm not always just heads down writing, but I do think that I have figured out the key to how to execute and get things done, which is how a lot of people get stuck. Like the other thing when you start to write and put out books, I run into people all the time say, I need to work on my book. I've been working on my book. I'm like, well, when are you going to release it? When you're 125? Like, let's go. And so, I mean, it's one of the things that I would love to do is like a retreat just on topics like that. Like, so you come spend 2 or 3 days with me, you will leave with a good portion of your manuscript, not just fully written, but outlined, designed, but the encouragement that you need and a framework, a system. And I think that's what I'm really good at, John, is systems. I figure out ways to get things done and then I can just execute. So if you can write 1 book successfully, you can write 10, you can write 20, but you do
Yeah.
have to start writing. So
Yeah, and I think the thing with people in publishing or self-publishing their books is that they have they've created this big mountain of things they think needs to happen for a book to be released, but it's
Mhm.
really not as difficult as what people believe it is. If they
No.
would just really make connections with the right people that can educate them on the steps of how getting it published, I think we will see a lot more of these
Right.
books
And
out
then
on shelves.
and the thing is they don't have to be these 200-300 page books, because in this day and age, I mean, think about, it's X now, but Twitter, right? 140 characters. Like, our life and our means of communication is so brief. So if you give someone a 400-page book, the chances of them even finishing it are very slim. How do you figure out what it is that you want to say? What story are you going to wrap it in? And then get it out there, right? And I'll just say this, and because I know we have something else that we came on here to talk about. But one of the things that I believe too is, like I said, if you're doing it, it's not really for you. You're doing it for someone else. So what is the visual image you have of the people who are supposed to experience your story and these lessons that you've learned, or this insight that you have, or this future that you see? Get the most clear picture you can of those individuals, right? And just in the same way that we've done vision boards and all that other sort of, but identify who those people are, describe them, write that out, and then put it up somewhere where you can see it and know that this is who I'm writing for. And let that open you up and get you into the process of sharing your story in this real cool, sort of intimate way. Don't think about writing to the almost 8 billion people on the planet, because the large majority of them, even if you are hugely successful, will never even know your book exists. Figure out who you are writing for. Get the clearest visual image in your head of who they are, and let that begin to energize and inspire you.
Yeah. I love that. And I think another thing too, and I don't know if this is just something that people say because they are afraid of what they may perceive as failure. I just hear a lot of people, oh, I just want to get my book out. I don't care if it's only one person that reads the book. No, you need to care whether more than one person reads a book. And I think that's why it's so important to target those groups and that audience that
Right.
you want to read your book. Because if they read it, they're going to spread the word.
Well, okay. So you just said something that gave me a thought. So again, we'll get through this, 'cause I know we got to get to this other topic. So what you just said is, so if I write it for one person, but think about it, all right? And so what happens with individuals, or we always resonate in a frequency, right? We're in a space. So if you can think about, let's say it is that one person, well, out of 8 billion people, how many people are resonating in that same frequency? That's your audience. All of those people are your audience. They're the ones who are going to see what you've written and take it in and interpret it, and it's going to be like fresh, clean water, breathing in new, fresh air. And so, if there's one person, again, if you can identify that person and how they resonate in their frequencies, everybody who resonates that way, that is your audience.
I see Crystal, she made a comment. She said, I needed to hear this. Writing my book is taking forever.
Hmm.
And Crystal is one, I know her personally. She has an extraordinary story, so I really do hope that she gets that book out. So, Crystal, this should be a great inspiration to you tonight to go ahead and, yeah, start working on it and getting it on out there. So Jerry, let's go ahead and get to what we're here for
Ooh,
tonight. You ready,
man, oh man.
man?
Hey, I'm here now. So let's go.
So let's talk about toxic people.
Mm,
So
mm,
what do you think first? What is toxic? Like, according to you, what do you define toxic
okay.
as?
So so when y'all see me look this way, that means I don't have my whole life memorized. So I'm gonna start you through 4 phases of a definition, but we'll be able to talk about each one. So a toxic person, in terms of how we use it in contemporary language in psychology, describes individuals who are consistently negative, cause emotional distress, or exert control over others. They are characterized by behaviors that are harmful, manipulative, self centered, and lack empathy. We'll stop right there because there's more, but let's just because I think right there there's some, oh, either I know someone that's like that, or I have been like that, right? And so that's kind of the basis of it. And really what I thought about with this is the thing about the manipulation, right? And how people can use their anger or even their connection to you to manipulate you. by threatening to take those things away from you, right? To take their presence away from you, to take their, you know, their acceptance of you, their applauding of you. They're basically threatening to strip you down if you don't comply with them. To me, that is very, very toxic. And the other, which we'll come back to later, I think, is also the lack of empathy, right? And I think the lack of empathy is really important because when we talk about how does a person who is toxic come out of it, I think that empathy comes into it. But we'll get to that in the later stage. Anyways, but what do you agree with that definition, or do you see it differently?
I completely agree with that. And especially with the empathy part of it, the empathy part. And I think people get empathy and sympathy mixed up a lot of times, and they really don't understand. Empathy is not saying that you have experienced what someone is feeling, it's just acknowledging that they have feelings about something. It could be something you said, something that has happened in their life. I have a sister that, and we talk about this all the time because sometimes it seems as though because things on her experience, it's like she can't get it. And I tell her sometimes, you just have to say like and tell people like, well, I've never experienced what you've experienced. I've never
Mhm.
experienced that, but I understand that it has hurt you, and I hate that you had to experience this. I
Right.
hate that you had to experience that and have some type of understanding to what people are dealing with. And I think a lot of times people do not, they lack that. And people walk away destroyed and torn apart because the person that they're looking to understand what they're feeling, they show no empathy at all.
Right. Because so if sympathy is I feel the way that you feel, empathy is I understand how you feel and how you could feel that way. And to me, that is an essential cornerstone of how a society kind of bands itself together, right? We have to be able to get access to our empathy if we're really going to be productive members of any community or any group, because otherwise we're insulated. So if there's no empathy, there's no compassion, there's no understanding, there's no forgiveness, there's no forbearance, and then we constantly then sit in the position of judging others, and then everything they do is a crime to us if we walk in that space, right? But I remember again, and then I'm gonna just for a quick second point back to the book, because in the book there's a chapter that says that right is not always right now. And when I learned that lesson, it's become one of the most valuable lessons for me because, years ago in my first marriage, right? Which if I'm talking about my first, then obviously it didn't make it, right? It didn't survive. Um, so um, but I had certain views in my head about marriage and what made it work and the things you do, and very formulaic in my head. And then when it started to go badly, um, the thing that I really wanted was to be heard, right? Because I had my side, because if you go through that, and especially if it's anywhere near public, you're not just talking about the division of property. You're talking about the division of your social circles and all of that. And I found out that I was pushing and fighting even in court. And what I really wanted was to be heard because I felt that I was right in certain things. And that's where the lesson right is not always right now. Just because I think it doesn't mean other people have to think it. Right? Just because I believe it doesn't mean other people have to believe it. Just because I do it doesn't mean other people have to do it. And that was part of me now gaining access to my own empathy, compassion, and understanding. It says just because I'm here doesn't mean other people are going to follow me there. They get to take their own path just like I took mine. That was one of the big beginnings of empathy, understanding, and compassion. And then we say, well, I would never do that. The only thing that stands between you and what you would never do is a situation and a circumstance.
Mhm.
And none of us can sit here today and say what we would never do because you really don't know that.
Yeah, and that is so true because when we hear of someone else's experiences, and it seems as though their experiences may be extreme, and it goes against everything we believe we built ourselves to be. We
Right.
can't see ourselves in that situation. And sometimes we like shun people or think down on people because they are making decisions that we wouldn't make, that seems ludicrous to us at the time.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So let's do this. So let's make this more fun. And I'm seeing some of the comments. Please keep them coming. So let's go on with the definition. So toxic individuals are known to be judgmental and critical, often resorting to gossip as a means of communication. So basically saying their language is gossip. They might use gaslighting techniques where they manipulate others into doubting their own perceptions and sanity. These individuals can also be dishonest and regularly display anger. Right. So now we're getting into some stuff, right? The people that first, because they are so judgmental and critical. But I think in today's society, John, this is kind of what we've been set up for, right? Because I think in terms of whether we're talking about television, movies, social media, social commentary, it is designed to do one of four things. One is to enrage and anger us. The other thing is to keep us afraid. The other thing is to cause us to distrust one another. And the other is to become critical of one another. Everything spins on that. If there's some controversy, like again, you can put out 1,000 episodes of the most positive information possible. But if you start using your platform to go after people and talk about people and criticize people and down people and denigrate people, watch your views and your clicks go up, because there's an appetite in society for that. And the algorithms on social media platforms are tuned to that. You see what I'm saying? So we're on a constant diet of being enraged and angered, being afraid, distrusting, and then becoming critical. So go ahead.
No, yeah, and it's so true. Like in the internet, social media, it constantly feeds us
Right.
what we click on. And I don't think a lot of us really realize that. But if you really pay attention to what is showing up on your news feed, you would really be like in awe of what you're constantly feeding yourself. And I just told, it was last week on my therapy call, I shared with my therapist that I noticed, like, and this is just a growth part for me now, when I go onto YouTube and I look at a lot of the shorts, and a lot of the shorts, I was like, dang, I was looking at this stuff constantly because that was all that it was on my thing. And I honest to God, I went trying to clear out my history and everything because I'm like, I'm at a different space in my life. But at that one time, I could see like why I was always sad or depressed or whatever, because I was constantly feeding myself not so much negative messages, but messages that wasn't about positive content.
Right.
And it impacted my life. And I think people do not get that about what we're feeding ourselves every day on social media.
Right. So how about this then? So we know that the air, the water, and the food are largely toxic. And it's worse in some places. Like most of us, no matter where you live, you probably don't drink the tap water that comes out of the faucet in your own house that you bought and paid for. Right. And so we're suspicious of the air, the water, and the food, because we know that if we are exposed to toxic food over time, at some point, it's going to make us sick. And we know that there's an escalation of so many diseases, largely because of what we are putting in our bodies. And a lot of it is toxic. So why would it be any different that if you are around toxic people, that it's not going to make you sick emotionally in some way cripple you? Like what you just said, like if we're on this constant diet of the negative, how do we turn around then and do positive things? How do we get to positive outcomes? Because our mind is not fixed on the good and the greater good that can come out of what we're doing, because everything we see is destructive, it's murderous, it's angry, it's conniving. Like this is the diet that we have been on. If the bad food is going to make you sick and eventually kill you, what do you think is happening to your psyche, to your mind? You're feeding on negativity. And when we talked about this last time, it is a requirement for many people in their entertainment. The feel-good story, we need some murder. We need some theft. We need some sneaking around. Those are the things that get us excited. And I don't care what ilk or what cover you have over you, whether you call yourself Muslim, Christian, atheist, or whatever, everyone seems to be consuming the same diet.
Yeah. Yeah, and we, when we're thinking about like negative content and everything that is, on the internet nowadays, and my heart goes out to this person, but I've never been like a fan of Wendy Williams, and there's nothing. I'm not speaking negative of her, but because of her platform, I just never ever really got into it. It was something that I never subscribed to. When I would see it, I would just pass on by. But now it's funny, these same people that were supporting her and they were following her and sharing her content, these are the same people now that are saying, oh, it's karma hitting her back. Now that but that it was feeding you what you were desiring at the time.
Right.
And I hate that everything that's going on with her, but it is so true. The world drives or thrives off of the negativity, because I guess it makes some people feel like, well, my life is not so bad if this is happening to someone else. Makes us feel a little bit better. I guess make them feel a little bit better about their own lives when they look at the downfall of others. So
wow, just hearing you say, like, I've heard it, but just hearing it, it just kind of saddens me a little bit.
Yeah,
that we do that, and the fact that on negativity, people are getting rich off of it, right? And so there is that part of it. And then you made me think of one thing when you mentioned her, and I want to be careful with some of the names here,
right.
for me, but I think the other way that the toxicity comes in, right? Because it is still largely negative, right? That would be a good synonym to use for toxic. It's just this pervasive, and this really low energy negativity. And so sometimes it comes in the form of complaints. Like, I don't know if you've ever been around people. It's like nothing is ever right. Nothing is ever good enough. They always have something to complain about. You could take them to a 5-star restaurant. They're going to find something that is wrong with the meal. They're going to find something that was wrong with the service. And people, they make these really definitive comments about things, right? And I'm real careful on punctuation, right? When someone says, that was nasty. Was it nasty, or you just didn't like it? They're not the same thing, right? And then here's the thing, they say, well, people may not like it. I'm just telling the truth. Now this is the one. This will be a chapter in my next book. I think one of the biggest risks that we have is the truth. Let me explain. If I tell you, John, that something is the truth, when I say that to you, well, let's stop here. What is truth? Truth is empirical. It means it's the same every time. It's the same for everybody in every place, in every economy, every geography. That is empirical, right? So if I tell you something is the truth, how do I say that to you without it being implied that there's an expectation that you change the way that you behave or do something? And so people are wielding around what they're calling the truth as a way to manipulate and control other people. But in fact, what you are calling truth is not the truth. It's just the perspective. It's just your side of the story.
Yeah.
Right. And we saw that whole thing that happened with the Cat Williams interview, and people, well, he just telling the truth. Did he really, though?
Yeah.
Did he really? What he did is gave you a perspective. It's like, so if you and I go to the same party, right? But we arrive at different times, right? And I get there and they have this amazing pasta dish. I'm like, man, this is so good. Everyone else thinks it's good. They eat it all. So when I'm leaving there, I'm thinking about how good the pasta was. You come afterwards, and then you hear somebody say, "Man, the pasta was so good." And you're like, "Man, they didn't have no pasta there." Who's lying?
Yeah.
Neither of us. We simply have a different perspective based on when we came in the room. And so people are wielding this around. Again, I don't care what banner you fly under, but when we start talking about the truth, you need to be really, really careful, because for many people, it's used as another tool. It is extremely toxic to use it to try to control what other people say or do. Right. And so in the same ways, if a girl, well, they're saying a girl, but someone says, I don't like her or I don't like him, just in the way they say it, you know that they're setting up an expectation that you're not supposed to like them either. I'm not hanging around here. I don't F with her. You ain't supposed to F with her either. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so we start using this sort of illness that we have within ourselves to try to control the environment around us when we are walking in toxicity. You see what I'm saying? And then what it does to the people on the other side is it robs them of their freedom. It robs them of choice. It robs them of joy in their choice, because you are right there in the middle of it, judging their choices. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, Jerry, how do we identify these toxic people in our lives? How do we identify them? Because everybody's not toxic. Some people just don't agree with you, but we would label that person as toxic because they don't agree with us. Oh, you're negative, or you're not open to change, or something like that. It may just be they just don't think what you're saying is the truth or a good ideal. It doesn't mean that they're negative. So how do we actually identify people that are negative? I mean,
Okay.
toxic.
Well, and so I think, and someone put this in the comment. It really is about the consistency of that approach, right? Because first of all, any of us can have a bad day. All right. Any of us can have a tough moment. And in that moment, we may not be the best version of ourselves. But for me, I think that relationships require balance. And if you look for where's the balance, right? Are you the one constantly giving? Are they always taking? Is it vice versa? Can you count on them the way they count on you? Can they count on you the way you count? Like, where is the balance in the relationship? Because again, I have friends of mine who don't agree with everything that I do, but they're not ripping my throat out. You see what I'm saying? Like, they're kind in their response. They're looking for a conversation. They're not passing a judgment. And so I think is, what is the energy that's coming at you? How are people approaching you? Right? And we've seen this too. So, well, I'm saying this in love. I'm not feeling none of that. Right? I feel exposed. I feel threatened. I feel vulnerable. Where is the love? And I think you can interpret it by the energy that the person brings. But we also have to understand that this whole toxic thing starts to work its way down, down, down until we then get to narcissism.
Mhm.
All right. And so when you see people that no matter what, the agenda always points back to them. What's in their best interest? What will advantage them? What will get them ahead, even if it means leaving you behind or you losing altogether? Now we're starting to flirt in a different area, right? In
Mhm.
terms of what people's intentions are, right? And some people, you think about this, it's like, well, what makes people this way, right? I think part of it is their own past traumas, things that they've been through, right? Because then we start to build walls. We start to try to protect ourselves because we don't want more emotional pain. Um, and so I think that drives some of that behavior. People who've been taken advantage of, so they're not trusting, right? And so you're going to feel that in everything that they say. They're not trusting. So, for instance, you meet somebody, and in a relationship situation, but somehow you're being judged for everything you do, but it's really because of the person they dated 3 or 4 people ago. And now everyone has to be put through that sifter because you've not processed your pain. You've not dealt with your trauma. To me, that is still toxic behavior, right? Because now you are living through your pain, and to protect yourself, you're putting and placing demands on others. You're critical of others. Nothing that they do is ever going to be good enough for you. And even when they did everything you said, you still don't trust it.
Yeah. And so two things. First, I love how you said that people are looking for conversation, not casting judgment. And
Right.
that is so like important that I think that a lot of the times we miss it. And I
Right.
think when you know the people that are around you, you know your circle or your corner of friends, as Derek like to say, your corner friends, you know your corner friends aren't, they're looking for conversation.
Hmm.
They're looking for ways to make you even think bigger sometimes than what you're thinking. They're not saying, hey, I'm asking you this because I don't think it's a good idea. And I think we have to identify when people are just looking for conversation and not passing judgment. It's kind
Right.
of tricky,
Yeah.
but
But again, I've had friends of mine who have called me to the carpet, but I never felt threatened because I know the heart of this person. I know that they are for me. They know that I am stubborn. They know that I'm a master of words, and you don't want to be matching swords with me. You know what I'm saying? Because I can talk my way out of it, and they kind of cut right through all the BS. And it's like, yo, dude, seriously, you know what I mean? Right? And you have to allow yourself to be called into question if you're going to move your life ahead. Like somebody has to be, nobody can say anything to you. Everybody is wrong but you. Man, that's dangerous ground to stand on. All right, I'm reading this comment. Oh, yeah, I'm just keeping it real,
I'm
real,
just keeping. I
real.
used to be that dude. I used to be that dude. I ain't gonna even lie. I kind of like shared that with you a little bit before we got started. I've been toxic before, you know, and I had to come to that realization that how my words and how my actions and everything was impacting everybody. You
Mhm.
know, I wasn't thinking about that. I lacked empathy. I wasn't. I was just like, hey, I'm gonna say how I feel, and how you take it, that's your problem. It's up to you to deal with it, but I'm going to get it off my chest. But it, I had to learn that I just can't vomit on people.
Right,
My own issues on on internal issues, I'm putting it off on other people and I'm damaging other people along the way and just letting them go on. No, you can't do that to people.
right.
No.
And people, quote unquote, as we say today, people stand on that. They think that because again, because what I'm saying is the truth. It gives you the right to just wield a sledgehammer at people, right? That is toxic. That is not even about them. It's not about the issue. It's not about what happened. That is about you, right? It's about your unresolved trauma. It's about your fear, right? You're feeling threatened, right? Maybe you don't want to be left behind. Maybe you feel like you have to be in the lead, but it's all about control. It comes out as manipulation. Like I said, you can gaslight somebody because the same thing that if you did the same thing that you criticize them for and they bring it up to you, it's like it's a non-issue, like it never happened. It's not a big deal why you even bringing that up, or that's not really what I did. And this is when they try to gaslight you to try to convince you that you saw or heard something other than what you saw or what you heard. So um so now so here's this is the one that's really been driving me, and this is maybe how we can, when we get to the end of this, we can do this on a positive note.
Okay.
What do we do? What do you do when you're in a situation with a toxic person? Why do people stay? Right? So I'm gonna go back to the food example. We know that there are foods that are harmful for us, but we still eat them and we still enjoy them. What is it that keeps people in toxic situations? I'll wait for you, John.
Well, yeah. Yeah, we'll let you answer that. We'll let
Okay. All right. So here's what I think. And if you guys see in the chat, please, if you see it differently, please. Um, So, in order for people to stay in those situations, we're talking about whether they're relationships, it could be you working for the bad boss, it could be you living in a horrible, neighborhood around bad neighbors. There has to be something in it for you. In the same way that you eat that food that you know is going to hurt, harm, or kill you, there has to be something in it. Because when you eat that food, other than it, you're not going to be hungry, right? It manages your hunger, but you get a little dopamine hit, right? You get a little high to the brain. right? That sense of satisfaction, that sense of joy. So somewhere in this toxic situation, there's something about it that you really enjoy, that you really like. You have to identify what that is, right? And someone just put in here familiarity, comfort. Some people don't stay because it's financially. They're in a great situation. They may have a great lifestyle, or maybe you're in a circle of people that bring you into a higher social circle than one that you think that you could get access to on your own. It could be any number of things, but you have to think about the reasons why you stay. What are you getting out of it? Now, one could just be straight up fear. Again, but you're afraid to leave. Why? Because you then have to take responsibility for you, right? So that could keep you there for a while. Or the isolation, the loneliness. You can predict the loneliness. I don't want that. One of the
And I,
most difficult things for us to handle is the solitude and quiet of our own thoughts.
yes. And it's sad though, and I understand how people stay in situations because I've been there. But if people only knew, it's harder to stay in that situation than it is to get out of it and stay out of it. Because once you get out of it and you clear your mind and you're no longer in the slop of your life, you can see things for what they are. You get clarity and you begin to see things. And those lonely moments that you have is you begin to realize that I'd rather be lonely and like dealing with this opposed to still being in that situation and going through what I was going through, but it seems it is scary walking away from toxic sometimes, Jerry, or relationships that you've been in for ever. It feels like home because you've been there forever. And it's like I said, I use slop as an example, but we see pigs like rolling and loving slop. They're getting the slop and they just roll around. And to everyone else, we smell it. We see that it's bad for them and or it's bad, it's awful, but they love it because that's what they are used to. That's what they feel most comfortable in. And I think that is the thing a lot of people find themselves in. They're in these relationships with these people, and like you said, you bring your own past trauma into it, and you
Mhm.
think because your past was bad, you think you get here and it's better, but it's actually worse. But yeah, I don't know.
But so I mean, and again, you might be a better person than me, right? Because I've been in toxic situations. I've gotten free of the toxic situation, and then I went back to the toxic situation, right? Now, again, maybe that's never happened to you. Maybe no
Oh,
one
it's
who's on
happened.
who's watching this with us.
It's
But
happened. Oh yeah.
and so we go back and we re-energize those situations, right? So let me ask this question, and I see that at least from the comments, I see we have a lot of females, and somebody brought this up to me today. How does toxicity exist between parents and children? Can we have toxic relationships between parents and children? Now, I know the one where um, where the child over time can develop issues with the parent, right? And it's usually because once they get to adulthood and they can reflect back on their childhood, it's like, oh, that stuff you did was pretty messed up, mom or dad, right? Or both of you. But how do we deal with that? Because what I see is toxic situations. It seems to be more with mothers to their children's and mostly mothers to their sons, right? And I kind of almost want to stop there and get somebody in the chat to say, am I seeing it the right way? But what is it that drives that and keeps it going, right? To the point that the now adult child is not able or ready to really maintain any level of adult responsibility. So that codependence stays there. So somebody says, I've done it. Um, ooh,
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen what is on the screen before, even in my family. I've seen that in my family where I've seen the mother-daughter relationship of grandmother and mom, that relationship. And then I see the identical relationship with mom and sister. It's exactly the same. And I think sometimes and I think sometimes you can't fault parents for how they raise you. And that sounds unfair, but you can't fault them because they only know what they saw in their parents, in their upbringing. And if they didn't see any fault, because depending on what generation you was raised in, we just say, oh, that's how black people raise their kids. We use that as the reasoning. We use
Mhm.
it as a reasoning. Oh, that's just black family growing up. And but you see, it does get passed down. It get passed down. And I think our generation, the generations that's in its 50s, I think we're breaking that with our kids. And I think that to some degree, it's why millennials and Generation Z, they're out of control to the degree they cussing parents out because we're trying to break those generational curses with our families. And we're giving, yeah, I see that a whole lot. What she said, you pass it on down because that's what you knew.
So you said generational curses, and I've been thinking about this all day. So let me just say this. So when we say, and I'm not trying to get in your head. So when we say generational curses, right now we've spiritualized the thing, right?
Yeah, kind of, sort of, yeah.
But in fact, right, these are really generational habits that are being passed down. There's nothing really spiritual about it, right? Like, and again, let's go back to the food. Whatever mama made that was good food, everybody adopts that. And they're gonna replicate that. It's no generational curse about that. But these are generational habits and generational decisions that we are making. I'm not a huge fan of they did the best that they could because I'm convinced that some aren't even trying. Not, dude, I got to say it the way I see it, right? And I get it. And some people operate out of what they know, right? And the people that I don't give a lot of grace to in this area are people who think they're so spiritual and so connected to God, but you can't hear nothing that's being said to you
Yeah,
about any aspect of your life.
yeah,
Come on
yeah.
now. Really? You
But
you could interpret that this was just not the best thing to do. Let me just say this. I'm being extreme here, but just walk with me, people. Don't disconnect when I say
this is an opportunity for conversation, not casting judgment. So
right. Yeah, yeah, but I get it. But it is clear in some situations that parents have chosen their own well-being, their comfort, and their enjoyment over their children, right in their children's face. That's not doing the best that you could. But it is still because here's the thing. So the toxicity, and I do believe that can be channeled through and that can be passed down. But something else I said to somebody about this too, though, because again, if you have the parent who is unable to disconnect themselves from a toxic situation, they then become the conduit that allows all that to flow down to their children
yeah,
simply because they put up no resistance to it. And so that maternal or paternal instinct that's supposed to kick in, that almost every other species on the planet can exhibit it with no provocation, we can't seem to get our hands around that piece of it and do the things required to protect our children. That is toxic to me.
that
Now
is
that I've gotten
toxic.
it off my chest, I'm just
No, and I agree with you. That is toxic. That is toxic. And I use generation curses, but I do. We're just gonna go back to what we're talking about. It is toxic being passed down. We can call it
Mhm.
generation the curses or whatever. But I think in some areas, parents think, well, it didn't kill me, so it's not going to kill you. That's what they use. And nowadays, like I said, we call it generational curses. That's
I know,
what,
I
but
know.
it's
I get the
yeah,
vernacular. We all come from the same places. We on the same page. We
yeah,
know
we on
that.
the same page. So
But
yeah, but that's
some of them
what they
are
use.
just choices, and they are habits. So let's say, so the positive that I wanted to find in this though is, I want to go back to the empathy thing, right? Because if a person is toxic, I think, let me state this, in physics, we know that a body in motion will stay in motion until it's acted upon by some external force. And so if a person is acting out through these patterns and these habits of behavior, right, being impacted by their trauma, their fear, their anger, whatever, what is it that gets them, what knocks them off? And I think is there's some life situation, some life event, that's the thing that does it. It could be an accident, it could be an illness, it could be separation, it could be war, it could, but that there is some dramatic event that occurs. And when that occurs, it humbles a person. And the way you talked about people not being able to access their empathy earlier, all of a sudden, they have a completely different view of life. They have a completely different view of themselves. They have a completely different view of others. And once that person is able to access their own empathy and be able to share that with others, that's when the toxic person can begin to walk out of that. The other thing I want you to consider is this, is that gratitude and toxic thinking cannot exist at the same time. It's going to be one or the other, right? Because gratitude is really looking at the now moment, and we are looking to extract all the good that we can from that moment. What is good about it, right? Like, even if it's raining out, you have a roof over your head. You have a way to get around. You have food. There's always a way that we can tap into gratitude, and that pushes away the toxicity and those negative, complaining, berating behaviors that some of us have picked up, is to replace that with real gratitude, not thankfulness, but true gratitude. It changes the way your entire brain operates, right? So when we are in negativity, it's this part back here of the brain that would be lit up. When we're in positivity, in our creative space, in gratitude, if you were having a brain scan, the entire brain is lit up when we're in gratitude. And to me, that's what, and it's kind of interesting, right? Because in the books it says gratitude breaks through the darkness, right? And I hadn't really seen that way until we got to this topic, is that if you can get a person, even a person who's subject to other people's toxicity, to begin to live their life based in gratitude, then you will start to see changes, both for the person who is toxic and for the person who's experiencing toxicity through others. You will start to energize yourself, your emotional state, in a different way, and you'll begin to walk out your life in a completely different direction that you have. But toxicity and gratitude, those states cannot exist in a person at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a comment, and I want your thoughts on this here. This is one from one of our faithful viewers. She said toxic is one of the trending terms. What do you think about that? I mean, I don't, do you think that's just something trending right now, or is it a real thing?
Oh, it's definitely, and that's what I said though. But it is being done to us intentionally, right? And when it's, again, I'm going to keep you angry. I call it the age of outrage. Keep you angry, keep you afraid, keep you distrusting, keep you critical. And somehow we've seemed to, I'm saying all of us, but it's just been swept up into this. And so I think it's both true and it's sad. I'm trying to reach for the positive, right? Because I don't want to get off this thing and then go curl up in the fetal position and cry myself to sleep at night.
So JB Yates
JB.
said, living free and staying free requires acknowledging those things that have taken root in your life. Those roots cause behaviors and actions that show up in many ways. Being toxic, accepting toxic.
Yo,
Yeah.
let me tell you something. JB, love you. I appreciate it. That's my cousin. Um, so let me just say something I've learned about myself in the last few months is that when we talk about all this personal growth and development and all, and we think about this wellspring of all this good and all we're capable of, and I'm going to accomplish this and I'm going to do that. The longer I'm on this journey, this is what I'm finding, and for somebody, this is going to make all the sense in the world to you. It's going to be just the thing you needed to hear. Is that what I'm finding is that when I call the unfolding of you does not just bring up all the wonderful things about you and all the great things that you can accomplish. When that wellspring starts to come up, it brings up all of it. And at the same time that you are confronted with your greatness, you're going to be confronted with your frailties, and they will exist in the same space and time. And that is the real you. We're never all one thing to start with. But these things come, the great things come because they present us opportunity. The other things come up. So now we get to deal with it. We get to manage it. And I found myself, because of my past traumas, certain things happen and then I'm triggered. And then I react. And if you're around me, you're like, that looks pretty toxic, dude. And in the moment, you probably be right. But if you're thinking that your growth as a human being, as an evolving person, is going to be just all this great and just all the good, you're in for a really shocking surprise that all of it will rise to the surface. And now you get to deal with all of it. That is the journey that we are on. It is to be able to deal with our greatness and the faults of our humanity. And then we get to make more clear choices about which leading we're going to take.
Yeah. And in those moments when the world brings it all up, I think that's another place where you extend grace to yourself, because you have to acknowledge that this is a part of me, and this is, we're all flawed. No one is
Absolutely.
flawless. We want to
Absolutely.
be flawed less, but no one is flawless. So you, in those moments when it all comes up, extend grace and be patient with yourself as you work through those things. And I think that's something that we all struggle with. I know for me, I struggle with that when I do have to deal with those bad things that I'm not so proud of. I think like, oh, you 51 years old, you should be past this in life. But
Mhm.
and I have to extend grace to myself and say, hey, I'm still a work in progress. So people extend grace. So Jerry, last topic here. So no, well, that's not it. Hold on, we got one more. How to heal from toxic people and relationships.
Ah, sorry. Uh, I think in some cases, therapy can be helpful, right? I'm by no means against therapy. Um, I think that part of the healing is kind of what you said too. So like, be kind to yourself, right? Like JB just said, forgiving yourself can be harder than it is to forgive others. But and this is all about, how much self love do you have? How much do you love you? How much do you value you? And I'm going to go back to this again. This is why I promise you, like this practice of gratitude is one of the most miraculous things you could do for yourself. Because in moments of gratitude, there is no self-loathing, right? You're not going to be down on yourself. You're going to see the good and you're going to see the possibilities. Although, again, the other stuff, it's still right there. You will learn that those things do not define you. Even if they were in your past, it doesn't mean that has to be your future. And the more clarity and context you have around it, the more clear choices you can make about it. And I think that's the part. Now, the other thing is, who's the circle that's around you? Who's in your corner, right? If you want to go D-read, who's in your corner? If you're going through this, one of these dips in life, right, where you're going through, and I have them, right? Thank God for some of my friends that can help shake me out of it, right? When I feel like I'm completely unproductive, I'm not getting anything done I'm supposed to. Sometimes I just don't feel like it. If you look at the people in your corner and they are of no value to you when you're going through that, you have the wrong corner. You have the wrong circle. You have the wrong energy in your life. And that may be a tough one to swallow. But again, because relationships require balance, like I'm not going to leech onto you and just suck all the life and the joy and the energy out of you. But when can I get a hit from time to time when I need it though? When I need it from time to time, because guess what? When you need it from me, I'm going to give you that. And so if it's therapy, great. The practice of gratitude will pay you back in ways I could never describe to you. But the people who are closest to you, who get the most of the access to your time, you do know that it's about 5 people that you, no matter how many people, we could talk about the rule of 150. There's about 5 people to get most of your contact. What do those 5 people? Remember when was it T-Mobile had the top 5, right? That comes from science, right? There's a number of 150 relationships that we can manage. So it's your top 5, your next 20 or 50, and it goes like that. But if you think about the people that you are in contact the most, those top 5, and you go through a tough time, and those people have nothing to offer you that's of any value, and that doesn't mean they just cheering you on and patting you on the back, but I mean that can really connect with you and give you something that you need, you have to question whether or not they deserve that position. I'm not saying throw them out of the 150, but they might need to be demoted. And either somebody else needs to come up or some new person needs to come in, because you are not intended to go through life void of these sort of connections, this sort of help, this type of support. If that is what you are experiencing, then you need to evaluate the ground you're standing on and the people who are standing around you.
And just because you have to move people or demote people doesn't mean that they're toxic. It just may mean that they've already served their purpose on your journey, because people come for a season, they come to do certain things in our lives, and then you go your ways, and going your ways don't mean that they're no longer in your life. It just means that maybe now you got space, like you said, for a new person that is supposed to bring something new in your life. So people, I agree with him on that. Your circle of friends is something that is super important, but it is hard, Jerry. It is
Oh
hard.
yeah, without
It's hard to
question.
say, Jerry, hey man, you going to London every other week, I can't deal with that, man. You got to go. You got
I've
to
had that
go.
happen to me, by the way, too. So I really have. Like people, the light's too bright sometimes for people. Like, man, I'm over here working for real. But
Man.
yeah, I mean, but yeah, it's not easy, and I hope that in the way that I articulate it, right, because I'm really confident in believing what I'm saying. So I may say it in a certain way. I don't mean to do that to
No, you
oversimplify.
said it good. You said it
The,
good.
but these are tough choices for us to make. But this is the great thing about that unfolding, because that thing's just going to sit right there where you can see it, right, and then you get to own the choice that you make, because you get to make any decision you want, but then you see it right in front of you. There's no mysteries. You'll be able to make those decisions for yourself and for your future and for all the other people that you're supposed to touch, because whether it is through a toxic relationship or the most positive ones, you are still a conduit to the people who are downstream, behind you, next to you, looking up to you, looking to you for something. So, my pastor used to say back in the day, everybody influences somebody. Take care of how you operate, because there is someone who's looking at you. There is someone who's depending on you. There's someone that you can encourage, coach, console, or whatever. But that idea that we're here to serve one another, that should provoke us to sort of bite the bullet and make some of these tougher choices. Because what you do does matter, and it does matter for other people's lives as well.
Jerry, this has been like amazing, my brother. This has been amazing, amazing. Then I got to get you back on before this season end, so
Sure.
check your calendar for the second Monday in May. That's the last season ending of this season. So check your calendar for that. But got to definitely get you back on here. And this has just been amazing. And I hope that everybody leaves here tonight inspired, inspired to dig within themselves to make sure that they're not the toxic person in their circle. And that if, they are surrounded by toxic people, sometimes maybe it's just time for you to let some of these people go and not, it's time for you to move. But I definitely want to say again, if you aren't following Jerry on that got Joe, but it should say Jerry. Follow Jerry on TikTok and Instagram at JAT, the real JAT World on Instagram, and on TikTok it is JAT World 125. So go out and follow him there. Get his books, all 4 of them. The golf book, I don't know. I'm gonna have to go get the golf book. I don't golf, but I have to go get the golf book.
Appreciate
so
that.
Get the golf book. And then also the Live Free Lifestyle Evolution.
Right. So that's the Live Free Evolution. So we have the Principles of the Live Free Lifestyle, the book, then the workbook, Live Free Evolution, and then the Ultimate Weekend Warrior Scoring Blueprint. But I'll also say, you can't really see it, but I'm wearing some of the Live Free gear. If you go to livefreeinspirations.com, livefreeinspirations.com, you can find the gear. Stuff is really cool. That's where this mug comes from. I think right is not always right now. Solve the solvable problems. There's a bunch of stuff out there that identifies. And in the next couple months or so, I'll start doing more one-on-one coaching, which is one of my favorite things to do. So personal, professional, business coaching, those are, because I think more than anything else, I'm kind of a life strategist, is kind of how I look at myself. So that's what makes me really smile. I like that stuff.
Nice.
But I appreciate it. Thank you for having me back on.
Absolutely, my brother. It's
sharing your platform.
It's an honor.
Me.
So check your schedule for that second Monday in May. So check your schedule. But of course, we'll be in contact for sure. But thank everyone for checking it out tonight. We want to send a special birthday shout out to Marquita. She's one of our viewers here. Her birthday is on the 26th of March. So happy birthday to you, and hope that this year is the best year of your life. So again, everyone, thank you for joining in on tonight. Next Monday, we'll be back with therapist Yolanda Hargrove, and we are going to be talking about breaking free from past hurts. So that's what we're going to be talking about on next week. So it's going to be another great episode. So next Monday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we will see you then. All right, then, everybody, have a great night. Peace.